Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another exciting episode on the channel. I really hope you guys are having a fine day out there. In this video, I would like to show you how you can use a class called a UIViewPropertyAnimator to enhance the animations that you have inside of your application. Now, while this class has a super long name, UIViewPropertyAnimator, it actually allows you to create some really impressive effects inside of your iOS apps. And so having said all that, I would like to start off with two demonstrations with the simulator on the left side and also the simulator on the middle over here. And then we'll dive into exactly what kind of code we need to use to operate a UIViewPropertyAnimator. And so inside of the middle over here, I have a vertical collection view that has a header containing an image all the way at the top here. And as soon as I drag down on the application, you'll notice two different effects being applied to the header. The first effect is the obvious blurring effect that starts at a resting value of 0. So this is what I'm calling the resting value. And as I drag down, the blur intensifies from 0 to roughly a value of 1. And so that's kind of how you see that blurring effect change over time as I'm dragging down on my collection view. And then the second effect that we have is the scaling of the image or the header and the image view inside of it. And that allows us to enlarge the image view like that. So the magic that is being applied to the header is actually to use a UIViewPropertyAnimator. And this animator has a property on it called fraction complete that allows us to specify at a resting value of 0, it should look like this. And then at a final value of something like 1, it should look like that. And it automatically interpolates what exactly the animation needs to be to kind of make your animation smooth and complete like that. And so there's actually a lot going on behind the scenes here with our collection view, such as the layout parameters. And I don't really want to get bogged down in those details. And so for me to kind of teach you how to work with a UIViewPropertyAnimator and all of its basics, I would like to show you how you can build out this application on the left side instead, and then we'll slowly move our way to building out this over here. And this guy right here has an image view centered in the middle and a slider all the way at the bottom. And as I slide from 0 on the left side over here all the way to a value of 1, you'll see that we have those two types of effects being applied to our center image view. We're scaling the image as well as intensifying a blur effect to kind of give us this nice little animation from 0 all the way to 1. And again, we're using this property called a fraction complete. And it's really useful because you can reverse it to make it shrink just like so. All right, so a lot of this might seem a little bit difficult, but it's actually pretty simple once you see the code. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Xcode right now and see exactly how to build out this feature. Hey guys, before we dive into Xcode and do any type of programming, I just wanted to make a quick announcement for some of the new courses that are now available on the letsbuildthatApp.com website. And so starting on the left side here, we have the brand new Tinder swipe and match course. Inside of this course, I'm going to teach you how to build out this application over here, where we can swipe our cards to the right and then to the left. And also notice that the card in the back is zooming in and out like so. We also have the like marker right there, and then we also have the nope marker on the top right corner, just like that. And then what we can do as well is we can completely swipe our cards all the way to the left to dismiss it. If we like this person here, we can also swipe it all the way to the right like that. And then we can keep swiping like so, or hit this dislike button on the bottom left to dismiss that card as well. And then inside of each individual card, we also have multiple photos. So if you click on this card right here, you can cycle through all of the photos for this user. And then finally, what you can do is if you decide to actually like this person here, you can click on the like button and we'll simulate a match between two different users. And I'll show you exactly how to build out this animation over here that allows us to kind of make these circles animate from the center and then place them to the left and right like that. So let me show you that one more time by clicking the like again, and you'll see that animation just like that. All right, so that is the Tinder swipe and match course. Make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. Now on the right side with these two simulators here, we have the Twitter slide out menu course where I teach you how to build out this menu system over here that allows you to drag over to the right side to reveal your menu on the left. You can click on any of these items over here to replace the right side view controller. You can tap on this circular navigation item, and then you can reveal your menu again. You can swipe back and swipe over to sort of reveal and hide your menu. Finally, hitting the home will show this screen just like so. And on the right side over here, I also teach you how to build out this different style menu with the purple background and these green highlighted cells inside of our table view controller. So if you're interested in learning more about Swift development, make sure to check out these couple of courses using the links in the description below. All right, guys, let's get started with some coding right now. Hey everybody, welcome back to the coding session for today's video. The way we're gonna start off here is to use a brand new single view application, which I've already gone ahead and created on the left side of the screen. Why don't we run our application inside of the simulator on the left side right here, just to confirm that we can get a white screen showing. And so that looks pretty good. And this left simulator is the simulator we are going to be working with. The right one right here is the application we're going to try to complete by the end of today's lesson. All right, so right over here, you can kind of see we have an image view. So let me kind of highlight this right over here. So image view, and we have a slider right here that allows us to bring the animation from the resting state of 0 all the way to the animation completion value of 1, like that. And don't be too concerned if you don't understand exactly what's going on. We're going to be walking through this step by step in today's video, starting right now. Okay, so the first thing I would like to create inside of our application is our image view in the center. So let's head back into view controller, view did load, and I'm going to create my image view using code. And it's very easy. Hopefully you guys are familiar with this by now. Let's say image view equals UI image view, and let me use an image like that. And so inside of Xcode 10.1 beta, which is the current version I'm using right over here, so 10.1 beta 3, the image literal is less buggy. So you can say image literal like that to create this little block over here. And you're supposed to double click this to select an image from your assets, which is inside of here. I don't have one just yet, so I'm going to drag one into my assets. And let's use this nice little lady on the image right over here. So let me just pop that in. And that's our image, Lady 5C. The name's not really important. So let's go ahead and head back into our view controller. And now that we have an asset, we can double click on this. And in the previous version of Xcode 10, this was really buggy, but now you can select your single asset if you just have one in there. And there we have it. We have our image view, and I would like to add it in the center of our view controller. And you can do this a couple of different ways. Let me do this the kind of janky way first with a frame. And let's use CG rect, and let's say a rect of X, 0, 0, width is 200, height is 200. These are just arbitrary values. And what you can also do is say image view.center equals view.center. And then finally, you have to add this subview using view add subview of image view. And now you can run your code. You should hopefully see something inside of your simulator here. And then once we have it up, you'll see that the nice little lady is a little bit squashed, right? The image aspect ratio isn't being respected right now. And so to fix that, you want to say image view.content mode equals scale aspect fill. And once you run this, you'll have a different problem, but it'll look a lot better than what it was previously. And you'll see it's not respecting the width and height of 200. It's rectangular, right? And it's supposed to be fully square. So the last fix you have to apply is to say image view dot, let's see, we want to clip the bounds. So set that equal to true. And once you have that property set, it'll clip it to the perfect square of 200. So 200 from there to there, and then 200 from here to here. All right, so that's pretty good. And one thing I do recommend that you guys do is to use auto layout instead of using these raw frames and recs like that. And the reason is because if you rotate your application, you'll see that the image is no longer being centered. And so the way you do this is to go through the tedious work of saying image view.center x anchor and image view.center y anchor. So this is really tedious. Why don't I show you a better way of doing this instead? And so you also have to include the width and height anchor. And so the easiest way to get this to work is to use an extension that I'll drag into my project right now. So let me just drag this into this area. So UI extension, just copy it in there. You can find this in the description below as well, but this file right here allows you to perform some anchoring really easy. So we have anchor here. We also have fill superview and center in superview with some kind of size. And so let me show you how this works before I talk about this in any further detail. So let's see, I am going to replace this bit of code. I'm going to say image view dot, let's see, center in superview with some kind of size. For the size, this is a CG size. I'm going to use a init with width and height, and I'll use 200. So 200 and 200 like that. And I'm going to remove those two lines because I won't be using these raw frames on Rex anymore. And one last thing you have to do is you have to make sure that you add your view into the, let's say, view add subview. I want to pop the image view right above. You want to add the image view as a subview of your view before you perform the centering. And so once you do that, your view is centered in the middle, and using auto layout, this means that you can rotate your device and you'll get that view still centered in the middle with the width and height of 200. So hopefully you can follow this code of using this extension over here. If you want further detail as to how I arrived to these anchoring extensions, make sure to watch this video at this link there. I'll provide that in the description as well. Okay, so that's pretty good. And let's remove that one comment there. And I'll try to access this image view a little bit later on. So what that means is I'll kind of move this up here. And so this is actually called an instance property. Hopefully you know what that means. And I'll remove these two couple of lines. And to clean up our view to load, you probably want to extract this into a different method. So let's extract it. And we'll say setup centered image view. That sounds like a pretty good name for our function. These file private functions should go below these functions over here. So let's move that down here. That's a nice convention to follow, and you'll find this convention pretty much everywhere in GitHub repositories. And here we go. We have our image view like that. And let's kind of move on to applying some kind of effect on this image view, such as the scaling of the image like that. So we're going to figure out how to scale it first, and then we'll talk about the blurring of the image view later on. So how exactly do we apply a scale like that, right? Well, it's pretty easy, and I would like to show you how to do that by somehow tapping on the screen right here and then applying the transform of the scale. So let's say we can say view, add gesture recognizer, UI tap gesture, and this will allow us to kind of signal a tap onto this view here specified by view. So target itself, the selector, will be a function that we create right below. So handle tap, and we'll say handle tap, and then we'll do that and put a function right before it. You can't run this code unless you specify at Objective-C, which is what this guy will do. So make sure you expose it as an Objective-C method, and now everything's going to look okay. And we'll just say print tapped view. Make sure to spell that correctly. And once you run this, you can tap anywhere inside of your view. You'll get this print statement to be printed out down in the console below, just like that. So that's pretty good. And now I would like to apply a transform every time I tap on the screen here. And you can simply say image view.transform equals CG affine transform and apply a scale transform. So by default, these views right here have a scale of 1 because that's just how it works. And if you want to transform this with a scale value of x of 2 and y of 2, you're going to see the image double in size. So I'm just going to tap, and you'll see that the image grows like that. One thing that you can also do is to apply an animation. So UIViewAnimator lets us use this one of 1 second. So 1.0 is 1 second animation, and you can pop the transform in there as well. you can't exactly run this code unless you specify a self within these closure blocks. So let's just fix the code to look like that, and you'll get the animation to slowly enlarge the image view in the center. And that's kind of the effect that you have using UIViewAnimate. And that looks pretty good. And so now that you understand how easy it is to animate a view using UIViewAnimate like that, I want to move on to pointing out a couple of things that are missing with this animate call. And the first thing that's missing is that you can't really specify any type of midpoint value like 0.5 or 0.2, 0.75 like that. All you get is the animation from the original frame, which is somewhere over here, all the way to the scale value of 2 for X and 2 for Y. It's really hard to actually animate and interpolate all of these midpoint values between 0 and 1. So what I am trying to say is it's hard to interpolate and specify, values such as middle of animation at 0.5 or 0.25. And so the way to get around this is to use something called a UIViewPropertyAnimator, which is a little bit difficult to use, but I'll show you exactly how to do that. And before I do that, I would like to add a slider into my view first. So let me just rerun this and then kind of see what it is rendering right now. And we have our square right in the center. I'm going to add this slider right below it. And so let's do that by going back into view.load. I'm going to say a setup slider. And this is a function I will create, let's say right below over here, file private function and setup slider. So what the heck is a slider? Well, it's pretty easy. You just want to say let slider equals UI slider. So this component right here is our UI slider. And you can use an empty constructor like that. And a slider, you can actually anchor it into your screen by using this anchoring extension. And so before you do this, you want to make sure you add it as a subview into the view. So add a subview of your slider. Like that, and you want to anchor it to the leading on the left side, the trailing on the right side, and then the bottom is somewhere up here. So what you can do is the top of your slider is going to be the image view's bottom, so bottom, anchor like that, and then the leading will be the image view's leading. The bottom, I don't really care about the bottom of the slider. I'm just going to specify nil, and then for the trailing, I'll use the image view.trailing like that. And so let's try to run our code and see what kind of slider we get underneath our image view. And so you get this nice little slider right here. You can write all of this anchoring code using the standard, bottom anchor, leading anchor, and trailing anchor. But hopefully you guys can utilize this extension here to save yourself a lot of time. This is something that a lot of more professional software developers will do. Just simply create these utility functions to make your life a lot easier. Anyhow, let's kind of move on to actually capturing the value of this slider right now. Whenever we drag it from this 0 value here all the way to the 1 on the right side. And the way you kind of notify yourself of the event of sliding this over to the left and right is to specify slider.addTarget. And you just want to simply say, well, the target is going to be the self, and action is going to be selector, handle, slider, change. That's a method we create right below. Let's say add Objective-C function, handle, slider, like that. You might as well make this private for now. And then the event that we have to specify is dot, and you'll get a bunch of values to show up. And all you have to say is value changed. Hopefully that'll come up. And so let's just use that. And over here, you can say print, slider value changed, and just run your code now. And so what I want to do is to capture whenever the slider changes from this value of 0, you can kind of see, you get a lot of these print statements down here being printed out, right? So a lot of these slider value changed. And the question now is, how exactly do we know what the slider value is while we're sliding left to right? Well, this is pretty easy. If you just pop in a parameter inside of handle slider change, this function or this callback function. And so you can say slider of UI slider. And basically every time you add a target, these callback functions will get called with a parameter of the actual target or the actual slider right here. And what you can do now is you can simply say print and say slider dot value, and let's just remove that print statement for now. And down here, you'll see that the actual print statement will start from 0 all the way on the left side. So that's 0 right here. You slide it over to the right, it gradually makes its way all the way to the value of 1.0, sliding it back to the left side, and we'll get all the way back down to 0 like that. All right, so that's how we, kind of introduce a control to modify our animator that we'll now introduce. So now what I would like to do is to show you how to create a UIViewPropertyAnimator by going up to the top of our view controller file. So here is the tricky part. So here's the new stuff of UIViewPropertyAnimator. It might sound a little bit scary, but once you see the code and you see how simple it is, it's actually not that bad. I'm going to create an animator, and let's say UIViewPropertyAnimator like that. And you get a lot of different ways to construct this animator. I'm just going to simply use duration, curve, and animations. Duration isn't super important because we're not using the duration at all. We're controlling it manually. The curve will be easier to understand if you use linear like that. And for the animations, I'm just going to use a value of nil. It's a little bit easier to understand this if you use nil for now. And you can actually get rid of this if you don't want to specify the animations, and that's fine. This code will compile correctly. And somewhere down here inside of view.load, we're going to add an animation to our animator. So animator.add animation. You get a lot of these different animation blocks and methods, but we're simply going to use this top one over here and add animations. And the question inside of here is, what exactly do we want to do for our animation? Well, you can think of this as the completed animation state. So what exactly do I mean? Well, I want to have our animation be completed with the scale value of something like 3 or 2 or 4, whatever you want. We're just going to specify that inside of here. So we'll say self.imageView.transform equals CG affine transform, and we'll use the scale again. And let's use a value of, I guess 4 is okay for now. And we'll try to run this and see exactly what that does. And maybe I'll explain what these transforms are. So let me drag this over. You'll see that we have nothing, right? So nothing is happening with our image view. And so the last thing we have to do is to modify our handle slider change function down here. And we're going to modify our animator as we are sliding left and right like that. So all you have to do is to specify fraction complete on this guy is the completion percentage of the animation. So click on that and specify slider.value. You can try to run this code, but it's not going to work. And the reason is because this slider.value, let me open up the docs here. This value is a float, as you can see there, and this fraction complete is a CG float. So you have to apply the conversion of CG float to make sure that these values are compatible. Let me remove that print statement. And let's try to run our code again. Maybe I'll bring the print statement back just to show you exactly what the fraction complete percentage value is. Let me pop this back to the right. And so as you can see, as I start from 0, we are going to have our original scale value of, I guess, 1, and pushing it all the way to the fraction complete of 1, as you can see down here. We have the completed transform of scale of 4 for x and scale of 4 for y. That's kind of how we have this effect right here. Now you might be asking what exactly is going on, and you might be a little bit confused, as I was when I first wrote this code, but basically here's what's going on. At the value of 0 for our slider, we have the original state of our animator animation. And as we go all the way to the right over here, you'll see that the fraction complete value is now 1.0, which means the animation is in its fully completed state, which you specify inside of this animation block right over here. So the full transform right now is at the scale x of 4 and scale y of 4. That's kind of why your image is really, really large like that. All right. So that's kind of how the animator works, and as you can see, it's pretty simple to work with in my opinion. One thing that you might want to understand about these transforms and why you have to use a CG affine transform is basically by looking at the documentation over here. ImageView.transform, this is a property that is of type CG affine transform. And to easily create one of these transform objects, you just use the constructor using that value right here for scale X and scale Y. All right, so that's kind of how that works. Let me pop the documentation off away into the right side. And now is the other tricky part here of applying a visual blur effect to the entire view for our image view on this nice lady with a hat and the iPhone and the music player. And so, in other words, I want to apply this visual blur effect like that. And it looks pretty nice. And it's actually pretty easy as well once you understand exactly how to do it. And let's kind of walk through this step by step here. And you want to make sure you are in between the centered image view and the setup slider over here. So we're going to set up our visual blur effect view. And let's call a private function set of visual blur effect. And we might as well add a view instead of here because that's truly what it is. I'm going to create this function right below. So file private function and set up a visual blur effect view. So how exactly does this work? Well, you just want to simply create a visual effect view. Hopefully I'm spelling that correctly. And let's see, visual effect view. So let's see, effect view. So visual effect view like that. And you want to construct this using an effect of UIVisualEffect type. And so if you're not used to creating these visual effects, all you have to do is to use a blur effect like this. So blur effect equals UIBlurEffect like that. And you want to construct this using a style of a dot. You have a couple of different options here. I'm just going to use a regular. You can try whatever you want. And you just want to pop in the blur effect like that. So you see it's a UI visual effect. And if you look into the documentation by command clicking into blur effect, you see that it is of type a UI visual effect. That's why this bit of code will work correctly. One last thing you want to do is to use, let's say, view add subview of your visual effect view. And then if you try to run this code, it's not going to do anything because the visual effect view isn't covering anything because it doesn't have a frame to it. So visual effect view.frame, you can say view.frame like that. And then the frame of your visual effect view will cover the entire device, applying a blur effect for any view that's underneath it. And so our image view is actually underneath the visual blur effect view. So we set it up first, and then we have our visual blur effect on top of it. And then we have our slider on top of everything else. And that's why the slider is not blurred out. You can see it like that. It has this weird effect of zooming in and zooming out if you leave your code the way it is right now. So let's go ahead and fix this issue over here. First, let me rerun my application. And one thing that you might want to do is to use auto layout for this as well. And so what I mean is if I rotate the screen, it kind of has that weird effect. And one thing that you might want to do instead of using this frame code is to say visualEffect.fill superview. And that comes from my extension inside of this guy over here. So fill superview. All it does is it pins it to the top, leading, trailing, and bottom. This way you can flip your screen and it'll look perfectly blurred out like that. Okay, so moving on here, let's kind of fix our code so that we can have the blur effect start off with a 0 value, which is what this is over here. So the blur is not applied at all. And then as we move our slider, we want to intensify the blur effect by going all the way to the value of 1 and then bringing it back to 0. The blur effect is now completely gone. And so the question is, how exactly do we do that, right? Well, this is really tricky. And what I want to do is I want to comment out the blur effect because at the resting state, I don't want to have any blur at all. And what I want to do for the UI visual effect view is to just use an effect of nil like that. And the last thing I would like to do is to cut this right here and introduce it as an instance property instead. So I'll put it up here. So this is my instance property, and I can still run my code, but instead of having our blurred image at the very beginning, we have nothing being blurred out right now. And the last thing I have to introduce is the blur inside of the completed animate state of our animator. Now this might be a little bit confusing because I definitely didn't understand it the first time I wrote this code myself, but the way it works is you want to say VisualEffectView dot effect equals UIBlurEffect, and you can use whatever you want. Let's use the style of regular, like that. Hopefully that is what I need. And now I'm going to run my code again, and you'll see the perfect blurring as we slide our slider down below. So it kind of slides over. That's what we get for the blur. And then we can go all the way back down to 0, and our blur is now completely gone. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. But what's really going on here is that the completed animate state for our animator sees that our visual effect view is being applied with a blur effect, and that's why all the way at the right side it's completely blurred out. And the nice thing about the animator is that it knows how to interpolate all of the frames in between so that you have a less blur all the way back down to 0. And as you kind of intensify the blur by moving the slider value to a, let's see, fraction complete of 0.47, it's about half blurred out. And going all the way to 1, this is the maximum blur that the iOS app will do for you. Alrighty guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Now, if you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them down below. If you want to download the source code for everything that you saw in today's video, you can find the link in the description below as well. If you want to learn more about iOS development and Swift in general, make sure to check out the couple of courses that are now available on letsbuildthatapp.com. That's going to be it for me today. Keep on coding, guys, and I'll see you in the very next video. Bye-bye.